we're all biased in different ways. Apparently there's 50 plus ways that we are sneakily biased in a very subconscious and subtle way. So it would be good to tackle some of those. Dr. Rachel Hannam is the Clinical Director of North Brisbane Psychologists and is here to talk you through 6 of the lesser well-known biases that we could all confront with us after this interview. Hi, Rachel.
Hi, Ashwin. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Now, there's 6 of them to get through. We've got the 9 o'clock news coming up. I'm really keen to get through these 6 of them because these feel like life-changing things. Now, the first one is... Sorry, you go.
Yeah. Oh, I was just going to say, I have actually prepared 7, but we'll see how we go.
Okay, so you're going to surprise me with one because I only knew of 6. Okay, so let's see what the surprise one is. The first one that I had is reactance. Can you tell us what reactance is?
Yeah, reactance is one of the cognitive biases. Like you said, there's many of them. They're kind of systematic errors we make in our mental processing that take us away from rational thinking. They're often unconscious, but they kind of help us feel less anxious. Reactance is a cognitive bias where if we feel like our freedoms or our choices being taken away, we'll just do the opposite. So reverse psychology plays very much on this. So if we, tell someone to do the opposite of what we want them to do, then they may actually end up doing the thing that we want. I have a good stand-up joke about this, which is, I've written a book about reverse psychology. Whatever you do, don't read it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think this is actually quite topical, this one, Rachel, because you see this in the COVID, reaction to COVID as well. Some people don't want to be told what to do by the government, the health authorities, and so they are digging their heels in and perhaps finding evidence to match their psychological... The position comes from a much deeper place than the neocortex, but they can use the rationalizations after that they've decided to resist authority.
Exactly. We see that with the refusal to wear masks and other kinds of things. And this is a reassertion of one's choice and freedom and autonomy. So all of these, are trying to meet some need or reduce some stress or anxiety in us.
Is this a warning to people who have an authoritarian leadership style that if you rule by fear and diktat, that you are going to inspire this kind of resistance in your underlings?
I think we've seen that throughout human history, haven't we?
Yeah. Okay. All right. So don't have your Brutus moment. So we've got reactance there. The second one I've got is declinism. Can you tell us about what that bias is?
Yeah, well, because you and I prepared for this interview, I've actually learned a few things as well. I hadn't heard of declinism, but it's a thinking error where we believe that society is in decline and we apply a rosy retrospection, so where we think that things were better in the past and things are getting worse. So I tend to tease my children and say, when I was young or before the internet, but of course the reality is that many things in society, while they might be getting worse, many things are getting better as well.
When does this kick in? What age do we start being like this?
Well, I'm 45. How old are you, Ashwin?
Yeah, just a few years younger. Not many.
Maybe when we have children. I don't know about the research of when this kicks in, but I think it kicks in when we've got enough life experience to kind of look back and say things were better when I was younger, and now things are getting worse.
Okay, so that's good. So we've got a couple: reactance, declinism. What else is on our list of biases?
Well, you also put me onto another one called tachypsychia.
Yeah.
Do you remember what that one was?
This is the idea that your sense of time changes after a traumatic event or drug use or anything. Your sense of time can be altered, and that can give you a biased perception of how long something lasted or how short it was.
That's right. So if you're not into vigorous exercise and you go for a run, 2 minutes of running could feel like 30 minutes of running.
Yeah.
But also time can slow down when we're having, say, in a car accident, people often say time slowed down. So some sort of traumatic event, or when we're very stressed or distressed, we do get this distorted perception of time. And the other time that tachypsychia can kick in is when we're under the influence of drugs, legal or illegal.
Is there something we should do about tachypsychia when we remember the past? Should we take tachypsychia into consideration, that something bad didn't last for as long as we thought it was, something good wasn't as quick as we thought it was? How do we use this bias?
Awareness of all of these cognitive biases should increase our ability to think about our mental activity and therefore, step back and, put things in perspective. So yes, often we remember things that were over quite quickly, but because they were so stressful or traumatic, they've stayed with us. And so exactly what you suggested, reminding ourselves that, that was then, this is now, it's over, can be helpful. But also the tachypsychia is one we're often aware of. We're often conscious of that one. Some of them are more unconscious, but usually we know that time has slowed down.
Yeah.
And
I just know I'm laughing because it happened to me today when the phone system just collapsed about 12 minutes into the show. And it just 6 seconds felt like a minute as I'm trying to get this thing back online. So, yeah, I just had some tachypsychia earlier in the show, which is good to know that it's all practical advice. The rest of them are ones that you've brought to me. So let's go through your cognitive biases.
Okay, great. Well, the first one they teach in social psychology in first year university is the fundamental attribution error. So people haven't heard of this, but they'll know it well. It's where we overemphasize, when we look at somebody else's behaviour and we overemphasize the explanations relating to their personality or character, and we underemphasize the situational factors. So someone's being very rude to the barista and we think that person's just an awful person. And it leads to something called actor-observer bias, which means when we're the actor, we're the person, maybe we're rude to the barista and we kind of feel bad, but we think, well, I'm having a bad day, all this bad stuff's happened. We don't attribute it to our personality. But if somebody else does it, we attribute it to their personality.
Yeah, because we're not seeing their inner world the way we're seeing our inner world, so we kind of assume the worst about them.
Exactly. So we assume the worst about other people and tend to assume situational factors about ourselves. Well, I was tired. I didn't do well on that exam because I didn't have enough sleep. Not because, I'm not intelligent.
Yes.
And so we do see this with the in-group, out-group thing. It does lead to stereotyping as well. We assume characteristics about people because, as you say, we don't see their inner world.
Yeah, I saw that homogeneity bias, which is related to this, where people who are in the out-group, we assume they're more similar and our people are much more richer and varied. And I get this sometimes as well. Like I was doing a stand-up comedy gig a few nights ago and someone in the audience yelled out, "Oh, did you deliver us here?" Like an Uber driver joke. Because with the Indian skin, they just see Uber driver, 7-Eleven worker, just a few options there, whereas with their own people, they would see every job, every variety possible. So we do kind of lump people together when they're not part of our group.
That's right. And we think, we're very unique and very affected by situations, but we forget to see that in other people.
Yeah. Okay, so that's a good one to know about. What else is on our list of biases we should try and tackle tonight?
Yeah. Well, conversely, there's another one called the spotlight effect. So that's when we tend to overestimate how much people are noticing us. So this leads to self-consciousness and social anxiety where we think, everybody's noticing that pimple on my chin and, everybody's judging me. And they've done experiments where they've got students to wear really ugly Barry Manilow T-shirts and they ask, what percentage of people do you think are going to notice at this pretend party? People said, about half, but only about 10% of people noticed.
Yeah.
It was the same if they wore a really cool T-shirt. Very few people noticed. So because we do see our inner world and we are very self-conscious, we overestimate how much people are looking at us, noticing us, and judging us. And everybody's so worried about being judged by others that they're actually less consumed with judging us than we think.
Do you think the fact that people aren't really noticing us is liberating or crushing?
No, I think it's mostly liberating. I think when we realise the spotlight effect, that we've got the spotlight on ourselves, but other people don't have the spotlight on us, we can let ourselves off the hook, realise we're just as ordinary as everybody else in a sense,
yes,
and hopefully kind of decrease our social anxiety and just relax.
That's a good one to know. And I notice this is the second time I'm bringing the minority angle in this, but I think if you're someone who like myself, goes to a country town and you get a few more stares because you're so different to what they're used to, you can become a bit spotlight effecty because you've gotten a few more stares growing up in certain situations. So you become a bit more paranoid than you really need to be.
Exactly. Yeah, when you realise the spotlight is not on you nearly as much as you think, it can be very liberating.
Yeah, okay. All right.
Very relaxing.
Yes, that's good to know. And is there the different personality types, are they more likely to have the spotlight effect, like a narcissist, more spotlight effect kind of people than the rest of us?
Well, actually, I think it's probably more associated with being neurotic and being very sensitive to social threat and sensitive to judgment and rejection, and deep down, I guess, narcissists are. So there may be some personality effects. I'll have to look into that.
Yeah,
Ashwin.
well, can I just pick you up on that point then? Because is neurosis higher in one gender than the other? And if so, is the spotlight effect more likely to affect that gender?
Look, it's very much on averages, and on average, women are more anxious and a little bit more neurotic. But these are averages. They don't necessarily apply to the individual. No,
but that's the interesting concept that maybe some of these are culturally varied depending on, your group. So, Rachel, we've only got a couple more minutes. Let's. You said 7, so I think we're up to a couple more. Can you tell us what's next on the list of biases?
Let's quickly do 2 more because they're really interesting. The Dunning-Kruger effect is real quick. I can tell you it's our tendency to overestimate our abilities or our knowledge. So, if we know a little learning is a dangerous thing, they say. So we know a little bit about climate change or a little bit about the risks of vaccines, and we jump to conclusions, whereas climate change scientists, for example, or virologists are much more likely, they know a lot, so they're more likely to say, we don't actually know for sure what's going to happen. And they've done experiments with chess players who are very ordinary at chess. They overestimate their ability to win a game, and expert chess players have a much better prediction rate with their games.
I think this is true of every different profession, every person, isn't it? You must see amateur psychologists, do you, who think they know everything, is like within their first year out of uni?
That's right. And the longer I'm a psychologist, the more I realise I don't know.
So frustrating. Okay. All right. So we've got time for one more bias.
One more. Okay, groupthink. Some people may have heard of groupthink. It's our tendency to want to minimise conflict or threat in a group and restore harmony. And unfortunately, it means that we, tend to go along with the crowd. And this is what they believe led to the disaster with the Challenger in the early 80s, the space shuttle that blew up, is the scientists just wanted to kind of get it done and agree with each other. And they overlooked, and this is what our cognitive biases do, they make us overlook information and take us away from clear, rational thinking. So groupthink is a tendency to think like everybody else.
This is a very dangerous one. I heard a couple of solutions to groupthink. I'll get your opinion on them. One is you need someone in the group to play devil's advocate, almost a structural role of devil's advocate, and you need someone to subtly undermine the alpha leader who is dominating the conversation and creating that groupthink. What do you think about those approaches?
I absolutely agree. I think new things and good ideas are born out of healthy conflict. And groupthink, is the antithesis of divergent and healthy thinking. So I couldn't agree with you more, Ashwin.
And I'm going to bring back the group idea as well, because I come from a culture that's a little bit more collectivist as well, where they value harmony and they can be more prone to groupthink. Is there a cultural angle you could put on it of, people have grown up in that environment? Is there something they can do?
Yeah, I think there is a cultural element. More collectivist cultures may be more prone. That's one good thing, I suppose, about individualist cultures is that we can sort of stand up and add our dissonant voices. But it happens in every culture. It leads to cults. It even leads to gender conformity. And none of us is immune. We are all absolutely prone to these cognitive biases. So being aware of that fact and looking into the kind of unconscious errors or biases we have in our thinking makes it conscious, makes us more aware, helps us think more logically and be more humble.
Rachel Hannam, thanks for your time tonight.
Thanks so much, Ashwin.
Dr. Rachel Hannam there, Clinical Director of North Brisbane Psychologists, taking us through 7 of the lesser well-known cognitive biases that we should get on top of. I'm going to come back to you with some Brisbane-themed music after this, but it's news time.